다음에는요, 웨이브스랩스의 오스틴 맥카피 비즈니스 디벨롭먼트 리더님께서 대기를 하고 계시는데요. 오늘은 웨이브스 캠프에 대해서 발표를 해 주시겠다고 하십니다. 자, 여러분 오스틴 맥카피님을 큰 박수로 환영해 주십시오.
Thank you very much. First, I'd like to echo what Julian said. Very honored to be here in Busan. It's my first time. In fact, it's only my second time in Korea. My first time was about 2 months ago. I was in Seoul for Blockchain Week there. And Waves, the organization I'm representing, we had some interesting conversations with the city of Busan and interests in Korea in our blockchain as a whole. And I'll touch on those at the end of this presentation. First, I'd like to do a general introduction on what Waves is, our history, and how we got here. Next, I'll move to the introduction of Waves Camp, which is the main focus of this talk. And then lastly, I'll talk on what I alluded to earlier, our interfacing with Korea and our plans for a Korean team based here in Busan. Okay, so first, as I mentioned, I'd like to just go over a brief introduction of Waves, the blockchain. So Waves is a layer 1 proof-of-stake blockchain. It ICO'd in the beginning of 2016, so that makes it 6 going on 7 years old, which by smart contract platforms is a long time. And as I'll get into, one of the themes, one of the strengths of Waves is its historical performance and the amount of time it's been successfully operating as a smart contracts platform with no issues. So another theme I'll talk about, and one of the reasons why we believe Waves is such a great chain to build on, is essentially because we have the strength of our blockchain is in our developers, and the core sort of pillars of our ecosystem, our exchanges, our decentralized exchanges. We have multiple ones in order book exchange. In fact, I'm going to shoot forward one slide, and then I'll come back to this one real quick. There we go. So as I was saying, the strength of Waves has, for a long time, basically since 2016, been its innovative and talented developers. So I say innovative, and I have a few examples to prove what I'm talking about. For starters, as I mentioned, Waves ICO'd in 2016. It's a proof-of-stake blockchain. So at the time, and even today, it's one of the few proof-of-stake blockchains that is performing and has a history of performance ever since 2016, when it initially started producing blocks. There's been no downtime, there's been no issues. Of course, there's room for improvement, and there's gaps in our ecosystem that we think represent opportunities for third parties to come in and build. And that's where we'll get into Waves Camp, the incubator program that we're launching. But just to take you through a couple of our core applications on the blockchain. For starters, I want to talk about Neutrino protocol. It's called Neutrino, but the token is called USDN. So this is an algorithmic stablecoin that is the most liquid stablecoin on the Waves chain. This one, very innovative, as a matter of fact. It predates, for example, Luna, Terra, UST, I want to say by at least 9 months, potentially an entire year. And algorithmic stablecoins, especially I understand here in Korea, it's a bit of a tumultuous journey in stablecoins as a whole, let alone algorithmic stablecoins. And USDN, if you look at the peg today, there are multiple mechanisms that essentially allow arbitrageurs to restore the peg when it's below peg. And there's a recapitalization mechanic as well that essentially distributes dividends, you can call them, when it's above peg, and represents an opportunity to capture profits for people who are willing to use the protocol itself. So, so that's one of our stablecoins. That's Neutrino. I also want to touch on Waves Exchange. This is a decentralized exchange, another innovative product, because most of the time when you think about decentralized exchanges, Uniswap style, AMMs, automated market makers, and Waves Exchange is probably the most popular application on our chain. It's where the most liquidity exists for any trading that you want to do on chain, any DeFi activity, any IDO launches on Waves. New ecosystem tokens that are constantly coming out will come out first on Waves Exchange. This is an order book style DEX. Excuse me. It's an order book style DEX, which means you have more optionality. You have more customizability and the ability to set, stop orders and all the trading compatibilities that you would want that simply aren't accessible for a more retail-oriented platform like the Uniswap style DEXs that we have. Although for new users who come to Waves and are familiar with sort of the EVM style layer 1 experience, we also have that base covered as well, and that would be represented by SwapFi, which is an AMM DEX, just like I'm talking about, Uniswap, Sushi, Trader Joe, a lot of other examples. Also, we have an NFT marketplace. This is called SignArt. And leading into that, we have a popular NFT collection called Waves Ducks. And again, speaking on the innovative nature of the products on Waves, Waves Ducks is a great example. This is an NFT collection that has mechanisms built into it that increase the rarity of NFTs over time and reward stakers with yield on their NFTs. So you can stake, this has DeFi applications on the NFTs as well. You can stake them, you can earn tokens, or if you want to have a more active role in the ecosystem, you can take your NFT, you can get one from the SignArt marketplace. There's also a dedicated Waves Ducks marketplace, and you can use these to breed them, battle them, raise them, trade them, and there's an expanding library of essentially metaverse-style games that surround this NFT collection. Another thing that we've done with that collection is expand that over time and essentially make it open source. So what we do is we incentivize developers who might have a good idea for a metaverse-style game, and they want to piggyback along a successful IP, which is Waves Ducks. It's by far the most popular application in terms of NFTs on our chain. And so we allow people, developers, to come and they tap into that pre-existing IP network and infrastructure for this metaverse that we're building and offer them the ability to create their own tokens that utilize these GameFi mechanics and like I'm talking about, this pre-existing ecosystem of NFTs. There's also the expansion of that ecosystem through our own first party, I should say. Waves employed, members of our team who work on the Waves Duck project. There's an augmented reality mobile game. Essentially, it's like a duck hunt. You can play that to, increase the yield or essentially earn different types of tokens in that ecosystem as well. We also have a money market lending and borrowing platform called Vera's Finance. So none of these in and of themselves are wholly unique to Waves. But these are all sort of in-house developed projects that comprise a huge swath of the total activity on our chain. So what we're hoping to accomplish, and I'm getting to what Waves Camp is now that we have these core cornerstones of our ecosystem that are already developed, functioning, and being improved upon, we see the peripheral applications that exist on other chains relative to something like Avalanche or Solana or Phantom, Ethereum, we have fewer applications. We think that those applications that we do have, that I just walked through, we do them well. What we're hoping to accomplish is have an incubator and an ecosystem fund that is incentivizing third parties to come in, fill in the gaps, and create additional, sort of derivatives projects or any types of projects that might exist on other chains that don't exist on ours. We have a vast amount of TVL on our chain. At one point in 2021, we had multiple billions of dollars in capital in TVL, and that's spread across a relatively few amount of applications. Most of them are here on this screen. So we think that if we're able to convince third parties and beyond that, put our money where our mouth is and incentivize them through Waves Camp, they would have a massive opportunity to not only bring new capital onto the chain through their offerings, but also siphon away capital from, some of these TVL pools that already exist on the chain, which, from Waves' perspective is a great thing as well, because it offers our users more applications. If they're DeFi, if they're NFT, if they're metaverse or GameFi related, that's perfect, because we want these offerings brought onto our chain. So essentially we are offering, as I mentioned, an incubator, an accelerator for third parties. An interesting thing about Waves, I touched on a little bit. In 2016, it was a completely different landscape for blockchains as a whole, getting off the ground, going from 0 to 1. Something like 90% of all the tokens Waves minted, I think there was around 100, maybe 110 million Waves tokens minted in 2016. And I want to say somewhere around 90% of those were sold in the ICO. Nowadays, that doesn't happen. You have allocations for VCs, you have much smaller total market cap, or I should say circulating supply market cap that is sold to crowdsourced, to retail, to sort of smaller parties. And what this means is Waves has no VC backing, and it really never has. Sasha, our founder, is really proud of this, and this is something that we see as a strength and has allowed us to be more homogenized across the spectrum of people who own a stake in Waves, as opposed to very large holders, whales, which is by and large the model for today's blockchains. However, we understand there's a lot of power that comes from essentially having these stakeholders, very prominent, very powerful and connected, figureheads or key opinion leaders on Twitter or in the funding space. So sort of to have the best of both worlds, what we're interested in doing is our ecosystem fund, mostly financed by the Waves team, but also with the ability for sort of soft commit capital from third parties who are interested in having stake in some of these projects that we're in the process of developing on Waves. So that's what Waves Camp is. Who would be right for this project, for this program? Well, really this is for early stage projects who maybe have a white paper, maybe you just have an idea, maybe you have a pre-existing project on another chain that you'd like to see implemented on Waves, again, to tap into sort of the strong community that Waves has. Not only that, but some of the technical advantages of building on Waves as well. We use our own programming language. This is not an EVM compatible chain. We don't use Solidity or even Rust. We have our own programming language called Ride. And this is sometimes seen as a barrier for entry. At Waves, we like to think that, for starters, our blockchain was built from the ground up with this programming language in mind. We think it's more secure. We think it's more advantageous for us on our blockchain. Not only that, when you talk about the pool, the overall pool of Web3 developer talent, it's an extremely competitive environment. You have new blockchains, launching every generation, every year. They're faster. They have, X, Y, and Z different pros and cons. At Waves, we think that our profile of pros and cons, we are proof-of-stake blockchain. We have a long history of uptime. Transactions cost fractions of a penny. They settle quickly, and the transactions per second are, much faster than something like Ethereum, for example. However, slower than Solana, for example. But somewhere in this profile of, decentralization, speed, cost, and sort of ease of use for developers, we think we have an amazing portfolio of how that all shakes out. On top of that, with this program, we're offering a lot of resources for new developers who do want to build on our chain. We have programs online to get you started. You can link up with developers. You can have one-on-one conversations. We have a new developer relations dedicated staff on our team, and we have, as I already mentioned, we have our first-party developers for the Waves blockchain that have been around since 2016. Over 100, I think closer to 200 of these developers on staff that are able to help folks who want to build on our chain. Aside from that, we offer capital. So of course, this is extremely important. We don't think the most important aspect of building a project, but it's available nonetheless for marketing, business development costs. I'll keep going here. This is what I'm talking about. So essentially, we have the package of support for marketing if teams need marketing. Maybe they don't. Same story with business development. Getting listings, getting sort of analytics up and going, other sort of IDO support on our own chain, Waves Exchange, technical guidance, mentorship, education. So what we're hoping to accomplish is to have ongoing batches of programs come through our incubator. And this essentially has just kicked off. So this is kind of like an introductory period for our incubator and our ecosystem fund. What we're hoping to do, despite the less than ideal market conditions, sort of this idea was formulated in the early parts of this year, and we've been staffing up. We've been building out our marketing teams and all the support for this incubator, technical teams, business development teams, community teams. Basically, we want to have this be a one-stop solution for as much or as little support as a new, enterprising project could need. And some projects we've already had, dozens and dozens of applications. That process is relatively simple. At the end, I'll share a link, and this is sort of the nexus for getting us the information that we need to empower you to build your project. Going along here. Okay, this is just more information on sort of the specific support that we offer in this incubator. So again, this is not just early stage projects. This could be projects maybe they don't need business development or community support. They simply need technical support, or maybe it's even a longer term time frame, and it's go-to-market strategy and tokenomics. Let's figure those out first. Let's have this white paper created, and then let's have some proof of concept implemented on the chain. So I don't want to just discourage. If there was anyone who was interested in this, I would definitely say that there's something for everyone. Even capital is negotiable. As I mentioned, this is like a soft commit idea for bringing other stakeholders onto the Waves blockchain. So we think, our thesis for this program, as I mentioned, is to build out the gaps for the areas of our ecosystem that can be more specialized, or innovated on. We'd love to have projects that are, tested on our blockchain for the first time, not necessarily copy and paste projects, which is the model for EVM chains. A lot of times those projects will spring up on one chain and then superimpose themselves on other chains, and sort of with decreasing interest in innovation and TVL over time. That's typically the life cycle that we've seen across the multi-chain sort of framework that has been around, most heavily in 2021 and this year as well. So we have, speaking of, sort of cross-chain compatibility and the state of cross-chain stuff, I know Julian mentioned in his talk earlier, this seems more and more the consensus thinking that, the cross-chain future will be how it is. And to that end, the Waves blockchain is most focused on sort of the thriving ecosystem that we have on our own home chain. And we do, as I mentioned, Waves has been a top 100 blockchain for about 6 years. Multiple billions of dollars of TVL at one point in time last year. I think today it's in the hundreds of millions. That's a lot of TVL on our chain, and we have most of our interest, most of our focus is on shepherding that on our own blockchain, not necessarily seeking or going out of our way to build cross-chain applications. We think there's a lot of work to be done. In terms of cross-chain security, there have been tons and tons of hacks, mind-boggling amounts of capital stolen or misallocated or frozen or seized. So that's our founder, Sasha, actually, I would encourage you all. He has a lot of interesting thoughts on the state of multi-chain and Waves. He has his own AMAs he does weekly, and he's got his own blogs. So I would definitely point in that direction to sort of learn more on this topic and sort of the philosophy and how it relates to Waves. Again, this is just reinforcing, we're interested in all types of projects. Waves is a general use blockchain. It's not just a DeFi chain or an NFT chain or a security chain. I think by and large, the blockchains of today position themselves in one type of application. Waves is not. So if you have any of these types of projects, we'd be more than happy to have a discussion on how we can make that project a reality on Waves. Okay, that brings me to the last part of my talk on how this all pertains to Korea. So I mentioned this is my second time in Korea, and it's shaping up like I may take many more trips in the future, which is a great thing. We're thinking of building actually, we're in the process right now of building out our Korean community team based here in Busan. Waves for a long time has been a very, very popular traded token in Korea. In fact, there are periods of time when Waves has more traded liquidity even than Bitcoin here. We understand that, the community of traders versus the community of people on a blockchain who are interested in the tech, who are interested in the developments and the new projects, they're very different. But we welcome all types of, sort of interaction with our token, with any of our ecosystem tokens and the blockchain as a whole. So we wanted to reinforce and invest in Korea because we understand it's a very, very important market. And so we are looking for candidates, essentially, who will be managing the events that we hold here. We'll be managing all the communications that we have with the market participants here in Korea. And furthermore, we may have more events, either in Seoul or Busan or wherever, is appropriate for members of the community. And until we dig into that, we don't really know how often, where they will be. But we do know that we want to invest, and we're, I'm here today as a, sort of symbolic of the team that we're trying to build here. And so along with that, we're interested in, of course it makes sense, tapping into the developer community here in Korea. We think that it would be no more perfect fit to be found than to have projects in Waves Camp sourced from here in Korea. That's sort of the largest impetus behind our team building here in Korea. We would like to, one, interface with the community, and two, tap into the developer network here in the country and find applicants onto our new incubator program. And here is some final information on sort of how to get involved. I'm the business development manager, so I'm a part of the sort of committee that reviews the applications for the program, has conversations, asks questions, get to know each other before we do the application reviews for members of the program. And like I've said, it's been a very warm reception. We've had dozens of applicants over the past couple weeks, and we hope to have dozens more. So if anyone is interested, you can reach out either to myself, or you can follow this link here, or join the Telegram, and we can get more information on that. I'm a little bit short here, but that is everything I wanted to get through. So thank you very much again, the city of Busan, for hosting me here today. It's truly an honor, and really appreciate the ability to speak on our program and how we're interested, and really excited for the future of our involvement here in Korea. So thank you.
네, 웨이브스 랩스의 한국에서의 활약도 기대가 됩니다. 감사합니다.